a mind escape. Are you ready?
Are you ready to escape your mind?
All right, folks, welcome back to Mind Escape. I am your host, Mike. We have a special guest episode tonight. I'm joined by friend of the show and author, Matthew Pallamary. Matthew's been on a ton before. I think we probably had him on probably 4, 5, 6 times, maybe, if I had to guess. So you can go check out those episodes. I'll try and make like a little playlist or add the links down below after we're done, too, so you can go check those out. I think one of my favorite ones, actually, though, was our first conversation together. It just kind of flowed in an interesting way. So go look for that. And you can check out Matthew's books. I have both links down below. We have I Am Consciousness Incarnate and the Thinning Veil, 13 Twisted Tales. So go check those out. Matthew's an excellent author. Fiction with some nonfiction stuff woven in there, you know. Yeah. So the episode I did last night, I know I pissed a lot of people off. I actually got some death threats and some people wishing me ill for just having an opinion on the current state of the rhetoric out there online. So listen, as I mentioned before, if you're just in it for the woo, you know, we're going to have people on once in a while talking metaphysics, cool things like that. But if you're looking for the pure speculative with no evidence, you know, you can move along if that's going to make you mad, you know. So, again, I love everybody and I wish no ill will on anybody. So if anybody's getting mad, that's not my intention. This is just my truth and my journey, and I'm open-minded too. I'll listen to people's opinions. If you've got an opinion on something or you disagree, leave a comment, you know, whatever. I'm down for it. So, but yeah, we're going to have an excellent episode tonight. I thought we'd talk about, psychedelics, of course, and, shamanism, and maybe have Matthew walk us through one of these ayahuasca ceremonies that he goes on. And we'll go from there. But welcome back on the show, Matthew. How are you?
I'm doing great. Good to be back, Mike. I love your show, and I love your stance for truth. And you're the show, and you're the boss, bro. So,
yeah, it's just it is what it is. But you know, we're gonna let it flow tonight. That's you know what happens when we have you on. So, again, we've talked about so many different things, and we've probably maybe even touched on this stuff before, but I thought we could do like an in-depth thing. So when you go to South America, where do you go? How does the journey begin? Where do you start from? Let's go from there.
sure. I'll take you from the very beginning because I'm going in October. I'm going to go down for my 14th 10-day plant diet. I've also spent probably a couple of months with the Shipibo Indians, not working with ayahuasca, but not with a strict dieta, just staying in the village and working with them. So I probably have a total of maybe altogether, maybe 7 months total in the jungle, and maybe a couple of months in the Andes working with all the plant medicines up there. I've been to other places, but we can keep it down there. So I go to the Peruvian Amazon. I always like to say, if you look at those maps of the Earth at night, and you see everything all lit up, and then you see the black spots, I go to the black spots. That's, you know, it's the middle of the jungle. There's no radio, there's no electricity, all of that. And where I'm at now in San Diego, I have right across from where I'm living, there's a bus. I'll give you this whole rundown to get there. I get on the bus, take a trolley, then a train to LA, and then a bus to LAX, then a 8-hour flight to Lima, and then we usually have to stay over in Lima overnight, and then an hour flight to a jungle town called Pucallpa, and the shaman has a compound there in Pucallpa. So we stay there overnight, and then we go down musty, dusty, muddy, potholy dirt roads, about 3 hours maybe to a village. And then we get in big canoes and we go another couple of hours upriver. It's like a tributary of a tributary of a tributary of the Amazon. And we get to the shaman's camp. And that's where we stay for the 10-day plant dieta. Now, when we do the dieta, it's either oatmeal, quinoa, or rice boiled, baked or boiled plantanos, which are the non-ripe bananas that taste like cardboard, maybe a piece of chicken or fish once a day. No soap, no shampoo, no scents of any kind, nothing. And
I do remember that part because of the flowers, right? The flower baths. And
yeah, flower bath. That's correct. That's right.
one question I had though too. So this person that you're going to see, the shaman, is this a personal relationship that you have, or is this something where he does like tourism, or there's like anybody can kind of go down there?
I've been working with him for 25 years, and everybody is thoroughly screened. In fact, when my mentor who originally took me there, he passed away last year. He was 90, but I had to really bug him for quite a while before he would invite me along. Maybe I was a little edgy for him. He's being very careful. Everybody is thoroughly screened. But I've been working with this shaman for, like I say, for 25 years. I started singing Icaros with him. And I started singing the Icaros to keep from getting sick, or trying to keep from getting sick. And now I've been leading ceremonies for, maybe 18 years now. And he's blessed what I'm doing. He's full approval because I've worked with him for so long. So you go in there and you get, the Tambo is an open air hut. I always get the last one at the very end along the bank of the river. So there's nothing but jungle on the other side of me. Although 2 years ago when I went, about a year and a half ago, I got on the bus. 5 minutes into the trip, I got off the bus to get on the train, and I stood up with my big pack, which was 65 pounds, and it swung out, and I totally blew out my knee. So I said, I'm going anyway.
Would you tear your ACL or something?
I shredded the meniscus. I teared.
Jesus.
I just totally whacked it. Totally. And so when I got there, and he said to me, I'd feel a lot better if you went and got an MRI while I was still in a jungle town. So I said, I'm only going to go because you asked me. And I said, but I'm going to this dieta. I don't care if I got to crawl through the mud. I'm going. So I had a great third world experience of being in a clinic with bugs falling down on me and a big nurse pulling my drawers down and sticking a big needle in my butt. It was an adventure.
And hey, people pay some good money for that kind of action in the States, you know?
Oh, yeah, I'm telling you, man. So normally we take the canoes up to where the camp is, and then we hike about 1.5 miles in, get to the camp. They portaged me further up the river in smaller canoes, and this guy put me on his back and carried me up this muddy embankment to the camp. And I didn't get my regular Tombo this time. They put me right next to the Maloka because I couldn't, and we had some great snake adventures. I can get into that later. But anyway, it's either quinoa, oatmeal, or rice boiled, the plantanos, as I mentioned, and chicken or fish. And then you get a full pitcher every day of a plant or plants, whatever you got to work with. And then you get other plants that they bring the leaves every morning, and you crush the leaves up and soak them in water, and that's where you do the plant baths with that. So I've worked with pretty much all their plants now. And in the jungle, they say that ayahuasca is the mother of all the other plants. And it really is like a 10-day ayahuasca journey. I've lost my mind down there a couple of times. Really went bonkers. But you're within screaming distance. So if you get in trouble, you'll get help. And there's somebody 24/7 on the perimeter, locked and loaded with a shotgun to make sure that we're all safe. And we haven't never had any problems. And then all the different plants that you work with, they all have different effects. Some are mildly visionary, some interact in other ways, some are anti-inflammatory. And you do roughly 5 ceremonies every other night. And then when you get to be an old dog like me, they'll bring you it once or twice during the day. You do it by yourself in your tambo. So it's really a 10-day ayahuasca trip. It really is. Your perceptions get highly, highly tuned.
So you mentioned, so are any of the other botanicals, are they, any of them psychoactive themselves, or no, they're just all scent based?
No, some are. The one in particular, which is very rare, I worked with, called Ushbawasha. It's very rare. It's hard to come by. It grows in small hills in an area near Tarapoto, and they have to take the whole tree and kill the tree to get the plant. So, and there are like snakes and all kinds of things to get. It's hard to get to. I was really lucky to get to work with it, and it affects your dreams and all that. Some of them are, so I won't remember them all, but there's Bobinsana Chuchuwasi, there's Ushpawasha, Unya de Gato, Renakia, Humaseba. I can't ever remember them all. But anyway, there's a ton of them. And then there's one I worked with a couple of times, Yaguarapanga. And they take about a spoonful of it in a glass, and you fill the glass up with water, about halfway with water, and you drink it. And then you vomit for 4 hours. You have to keep drinking and then vomit, drink and vomit. Or in my case, I had it coming out both ends. So like I'd have to drink and vomit, run and bail out the back end, get back, drink, vomit, blah, blah. I did that for 4 hours, and your stomach is sore by the end of it from vomiting so much. But it's a purgative.
So
the interesting thing,
that was the thing I was going to ask you too. So I know ayahuasca, people purge during that too, but is this, you know how they always talk about like, oh, there's anti-parasitic properties and stuff, like, is that the precursor stuff, or is that the ayahuasca, or is that both? Like, what's going on there?
It's both. When you do the Yaguarapanga the way I did it, like I told you about, you do it at the beginning of the dieta. You can go through all the ceremonies and never have any purges. It's like you get all the purging done up front. It's gone. It's just like that. In the jungle, they call ayahuasca La Purga, the purge. That particular one. Another one I did, Chiricsanango. You only do that twice. And again, they get this like a tablespoonful of that plant in a glass of water. You drink it. Your tongue starts to get numb. Your whole mouth starts to get numb. And then you start to shiver. Once you're shivering, you have to dip yourself in the river for a few minutes. Then you're really shivering like crazy. Then you go back and you lay down and you cover yourself up with blankets, and then you sweat like crazy. And then you kind of pass out for like 12 hours. You're in and out. It's like being really drunk. In fact, I remember getting up at one point because I had to take a piss, and it was like everything was tilted sideways. I could barely walk.
What do you think that's affecting? Your endocrine system, or
well, it hits all of your glands. It's like a glandular reset. It didn't happen to me, but oftentimes guys will have an ejaculation. It totally resets the glands. It resets your body temperature. And you only get to do it twice because it's that strong during the course of the whole 10-day dieta.
Well, yeah, I would imagine like that, having that process play out is probably not something that should happen often.
No. In fact, I was asking the shaman, can I work with these other plants? And he's like, no. that's it. You can't take any more like that, because it's an ordeal. It's not Club Med. It's it's not easy at all. But in my humble opinion, it's totally worth the effort. One year, I did the whole dieta with the roots of the coca plant, and man, was that powerful. I was in my tambo under my mosquito net at night, and everything was ultraviolet, electric violet. And it didn't matter if my eyes were open or closed. It all looked like that. And even though that's what was going on with me with my perceptions, it almost seemed like if somebody was 100 feet away, they'd see my whole mosquito net glowing. I mean, it was that powerful. And I would get fired up, and then I would go into my dreams, and I would have very intense dreams. And every day the dreams got more intense and more intense and more intense and darker and darker and darker. And I realized that it was kind of fortifying me to go into the dreams, to battle, because all the stuff that really comes up ultimately is shadow work. So every time, and then toward the end, I've had like horrific, I woke up screaming, it was so dark and horrible. But when it was all over, I felt supercharged.
So did you feel the roots of the coca plant had psychoactive like properties that you may not get from, let's say, cocaine or something like that?
Absolutely. I've been trained to work with the coca plant in the Andes. And what they say is that all of the things that happen with cocaine, the heart attacks, the addictions, all of those things, that's what you get for disrespecting the spirit of the plant.
Well, and it's probably cut with a bunch of junk that you don't even know what's in there too.
Yeah. And when you actually take coca leaf in its pure form powdered, it's one of the most perfect foods you can find. It's high in potassium and calcium, vitamin C. It oxygenates your blood.
But you will get those people that are picking the leaves. They have some pretty gnarly teeth, a lot of them.
Yeah. Well, they're picking the leaves because they're impoverished. They don't have dental plans. They don't
for
have
sure, yeah.
Medicare. So they're impoverished.
But so do you think?
Anyway.
Well, I guess my point is, do you think that it's from the plant itself chewing, like almost like how people get gnarly teeth from chewing tobacco too, or is it something that you think that it's just for, like you said, from being impoverished and not having access to dental or medical care?
It may be a little bit chewing it, but I think it's more being impoverished. I've worked with chewing the leaves, and when you chew the leaves, you have to take a mineral with it, like potash, potash, and other things you take with it to activate it. And when you chew it in that way, your mouth gets numb. You get a pretty high buzz. But when I work with it, I put the powder in water and mix it. And the traditional way is putting it in the water and mixing it with a little bit of honey and a little bit of lemon. It's a central nervous system stimulant.
Sounds delightful.
It really is. It gives you a nice buzz. It doesn't have the edge like caffeine, like drinking too much coffee and all that. And so I had already been working with it quite a bit. And when he offered to suggested doing it, that dieta with the root, I felt like I got really empowered. And I understand now, for me, the coca plant is really the mother plant of the Andes, and ayahuasca is the mother plant of the jungle. And it was just, when it was all over, I felt like Superman. I mean, just really, really clear. Aside from those plants, when you do the dieta, you get tremendously clear. I like to say that you're getting a tour of the jungle from the inside out. Your perceptions get finely tuned. They get to the point where I'd be laying there under my mosquito net, and the jungle's very loud, and I would think of somebody, and then I would sit up, and then like a few seconds later, that person would come walking over the hill. You start having even more telepathic experiences, and you get highly, highly aware. And then you have to adjust when you come back. So you go from this pristine rainforest back to the jungle town. And there's all the two-stroke motor cars, and all the insanity, bang, 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 and it's a bit of a culture shock. So we spend another day when we get back to kind of decelerate. And then, of course, we go from there, fly to Lima, blah, blah, and you come back to the U.S. and you're kind of in culture shock for a while. Not severe, but it's like quite a different reality. It's so quiet and beautiful there. Noisy, but noisy like all the bugs and all that and the animals. To me, it's like a symphony. I sleep like a baby. I just love it. And it's all natural. There's no radios, there's none of that crap.
Yeah, I
There's no
love sleeping in the woods or like a nice, I mean, I know it's
Yeah.
probably different there, but like my favorite thing is going camping and waking up in like the brisk cold and just,
Yeah.
the opposite is when you wake up and the sun's beating down on you and you want to, you want to
Mhm.
beat yourself up. But yeah, man, I mean, I definitely disrespected the coca plant in my early 20s, and
Oh, sure.
that's not a good route. That's probably,
Mhm.
alcohol and that are probably my two least favorite
I,
compounds of,
yeah, I agree. Back in the day, back in the late 70s, early 80s, I was in a rock band, and my bass player had all the coke I wanted. And one of the last times I was with him, we spent the night drinking Kahlua and coffee and coke. And when I left him, he was hugging the commode. And it's just not something that talked to me. Like, I tried everything I get my hands on. I tried heroin a few times, PCP, all those things. Nothing talked to me like psychedelics.
Well, yeah,
And
and
then,
the coca plant too. I think it's kind of like an ego amplifier, but not in a good way.
yeah, and it doesn't last long.
Yeah, it doesn't last long. You're always, yeah, the whole thing. I mean, yeah, don't get me wrong. There's some wild times to be had, but that's probably one I definitely regret. For the amount of times.
Yeah.
It's not, well, I guess if you did it like once or twice or something, it'd probably have a different take on it. But
No, it's all learning. I got strung out on amphetamines, for a while. And then, all of those things. But the psychedelics. And then when I first heard Terence McKenna, and I heard, to me, his seminal best work was Food of the Gods. And to have spirituality, yeah, there you go. To have spirituality connected with visionary psychedelic experience, when I found what a revelation that was. Because I was a vegetarian for 23 years. I went for 13 years totally baseline. I wouldn't even drink coffee. I wouldn't even take an aspirin if I had a headache. And I stayed that way. And then when I heard Terence McKenna, I went and I spent $1,000. This is back in the 90s, early 90s. I bought all the stuff and it took me a few tries and I grew my own mushrooms and went at it with a spiritual intention. In the beginning, it was about what I want to try everything and get my hands on. I sniffed glue when I was younger. I told George Norrie this on Coast to Coast, and he's
yeah,
like, you're lucky.
I think you've started probably 3 or 4 of the episodes we've done with you on the glue.
Yeah. And he's like, you're lucky to be alive. And he told me this last one, I'm paraphrasing, but he's something like, you're really courageous and you're really crazy, something like that. Because I was telling him about the jungle. But ayahuasca, in my humble opinion, is the top plant medicine. And it literally changed my life. It changed my life in the best way. And I had some of the most profound experiences. And now when I go back, it's an opportunity to let loose and not have to worry. When I'm leading ceremonies, I'm responsible for everybody. And when I'm leading ceremonies, I take less. When I've been all the times in the jungle, I take a full dose, sometimes more. I go totally kamikaze, blow my brains out. And when I go to the jungle, I can do that because I don't have to be responsible for everybody. So it's my time to really cut it loose.
So let's we took a little detour there, but let's go back. So you've done the plant baths with all the different botanicals, some psychoactive, some not. Um, where do you go? What's next? Is it time for the ceremony? Is there still other stuff to be done?
Well, so during the day, so the ceremony is obviously at night. You go till the wee hours of the morning, and then you crash out, and then they show up in the morning with your food, and later in the morning, and a fresh pitcher of the plant stuff, and you keep repeating that cycle over the course of 10 days. You get physically weaker, but you get more aware. Oh, and there's no salt for 10 days.
Is there reasoning behind that?
Yeah, you know what's fascinating? When we break the diet, we break it with a pinch of salt. And it tastes like the sweetest sugar you've ever had. And what the shamans say is that pinch of salt, when you take it, is the portal back to the regular world. It's like that. Well, I read some years ago there was a study that they did, and they deprived rats of salt. And then when they reintroduced salt to them, it stimulated neuronal growth in the brain. Now, this is prehistoric stuff, and those guys somehow knew that or figured it out. And to me, if you go, ayahuasca literally rewires your brain. So to think about spending 10 days of rewiring your brain and then taking the salt like that, it's almost like tattooing it into your brain. The other fascinating thing I've found is that when you go back year after year, you can see how much you've grown each year by comparing it to the last time that you were there. Now, you integrate an ayahuasca ceremony, one. When you do 5 of them or 6 or 7 of them, there's a bigger arc of integration. Then I've discovered over the years that there's a bigger arc of integration goes over the years. And it continues and continues and continues. I'm always saying if I never did anything again, I'm fine, because I'm in a constant state of integration and I'm permanently altered, and I wouldn't have it any other way. So there's shorter arcs, longer arcs. It's almost like writing a book. When you write a book, you have a chapter that, something happens, boom, and then it leads to the next chapter and the next chapter. And then there's the bigger plot of the whole arc over the course of the whole book. So this has bigger and bigger arcs. And sometimes it'll go back like, oh, that's what that meant 5 years ago when I had that vision. You figure it out, and you get those revelations. So it just never ends. But
So are the people, the local people there, how often do they partake in this? Or is it only if it's necessary for some reason, whether it's psychological or physical or whatever?
So down there, where ayahuasca is totally legal and revered as a cultural, traditional thing, I'm being a little facetious here, but ayahuasca is almost like Budweiser is up here. It's families do it and all that. I was there, let's see, 11 to 12 years ago. I went down to help out. I wasn't doing the regular dieta. I spent a couple of weeks with the shaman, and I was invited to a local ceremony with the local people. And I injured my back. So the guy who was leading the ceremony, who was a close friend, was catering to me a lot because I could barely move. And this one guy got really upset, a local, and I thought we were gonna go at it. And I was like, if he comes at me, I'm just gonna have to drop him hard because I was in pain. And he stood up like that, and there was a sweet Shipibo woman there in the ceremony, and she jumped up and got between him and me and blocked him, And I was like, wow, well, thank you, sweetheart, I don't need anybody to protect me, but I was in bad shape. But it was a lot different than being in the jungle. This was in Pucallpa, in the town. The other thing is, you can't, how can I put this? You can't trust everybody. there's a lot of scams. There's a lot of things, not good things that go on. You got to really find people with integrity. And I was lucky. My mentor brought me to people with integrity. And all the people they work with are now, I consider them my family. And they watch out for me and they respect me because I've pretty much taken everything that they can dish out. So I get a lot of respect. And I hate to say it, but now they're treating me like an elder. One of the younger guys I was working with 25 years ago, he was like 18 then. He's there now. And this last time he was helping me because my knee was so whacked out. And he's like, "Can I call you Papa?" So I'm like, okay, you know. And so he's calling me Papa, and he was totally, taking care of me.
Next time you go down there, you should just grow your hair out, make everything as white as possible, put a Santa hat on, and see what happens.
It's happening anyway. You can tell right here, whether I like it or not.
So you're down there. You're, we've talked about, I think, some of your ceremony stuff and some of your insights and everything. You mentioned Terence McKenna. I assume you've read True Hallucinations.
I knew Terence.
Yeah,
he became a friend. And my historical novel, Land Without Evil. You can see there's a poster up behind me up there.
The one where you did the play, right?
Yeah, well, this was actually this is a television show I was on, and they used Land Without Evil. We did do the play too, but they used Land Without Evil. I did a show called Bridging Heaven and Earth out of Santa Barbara. And Terence got the absolutely very first copy of Land Without Evil from the first printing. Because when it came out, he was doing this Alchemical Arts Festival. This was in like 99, late 99. And I couldn't go because my book was coming out. And I sent the copy along with a close friend of mine to hand give to Terence personally. And I'll never know for sure, but it could have been the last book he ever read because he died just a few months after that. And he was little side story here, and you can get me back on track, but he was walking around the whole festival reading the book. Now, I hadn't met Lorenzo from the Psychedelic Salon yet. And he was there wondering, who is this writer? And what's this book that Terence is reading? And he was puzzling over it. Well, 2 weeks after that Alchemical Arts Festival, I was going to one of my first ayahuasca ceremonies. And that's when I met Lorenzo for the first time. And we were talking, and he was writing, and he did a book called The Spirit of the Internet, which I helped him out with. I edited it for him, and I got him I helped him win an award and all that stuff with it. And they were talking about this book that Terence was reading, and we just met, and I was like, yeah, I'm a writer. Well, I'm a writer too. And so I went down to my car, and I popped open the trunk and pulled out the book, and he freaked out. That's the book that Terence was reading. Oh my God, blah, 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 blah. And of course we became fast friends after that. I helped him start the Psychedelic Salon. So there was that whole sort of connection through that. And I got to spend about 3 years not 3 years straight, but 3 years in a row with Terence at the Entheobotany seminars, which is where I met him. And I knew he had a literary bent. And I gifted him with one of my short story collections. He loved it. And he invited me to go visit him in Hawaii. I just never got there. So he was a real life changer for me. Terence really made a difference. I'm always proud to say, I got a picture somebody took of him holding my book.
So when they went down there, they went to Colombia, right? And they were with the Watoto, I believe is the name of the
I think so.
Tribe.
Him and Dennis.
Yeah. And then they do the experiment at La Chorrera. But my question is, they're seeking out this orally active paste that's like ayahuasca, but it's paste. I forget the name of it. I can't think of the name right now off the top of my head, but is that something that a lot of the indigenous people, or was that just specific, do you think, to that area?
There are a lot of variations. Like there are some people, tribes, areas who just drink ayahuasca with just the vine and not the chacruna. Ayahuasca actually, the vine actually has small amounts of 5-MeO in it, and small levels of DMT. Of course, when you mix with the chacruna, the lid's off. It's all on. It's all out then. But different traditions have used it in different ways. There are snuffs. I want to say cohoba. I could be, but don't quote me on that.
Yeah, I think that's the one. I think there's even early accounts of I don't know if it was Columbus's or one of the early explorers, men encountering the snuff. I think that is the one with the DMT.
Anandathera peregrina.
Yeah.
That's one of the snuffs that you ever see.
Anandathera, yeah.
Yeah, they blow it up their nose, and
Yep.
they're snotting and they're tripping their brains out, right? So there are different ways throughout South America. But the original traditions, not original traditions, but one of the first sort of Western discoveries, for lack of better words, was Michael Harner. He was an anthropologist and he worked with the Shipibos. And they're considered to be some of the best longstanding carriers of the tradition. And I got, like I said, I probably spent a total of maybe a couple of months with the Shipibos, living in their village with the tribe, doing ayahuasca with them. But it wasn't as good as doing the 10-day dieta because, that's all you do. And other than being in the ceremony, you spend all the rest of the time alone. So you can't project your stuff onto anybody. You got to sit in your shit and deal with it, And I was figuring out, as I mentioned, every year that I've gone, I can see how much I've improved over the years by how crazy the monkey mind is and how nuts it goes, So just before the COVID stuff, my mentor went down for the last time in 2015. And I was struggling financially at the time, but he insisted that I go, and he comped me to go because it was his last time. And I went down there and pretty much kind of lost my mind, which is, it's going to sound weird, but that's part of the reason you go. So then I came back and I got into Lima, and my passwords weren't working. I was trying to log in at the airport. It wasn't working. And I got off the plane in LA and I turned on my phone and I was flooded with messages. My credit union fraud department, credit card fraud department. There was like a dozen messages.
That's exactly what you want to hear after that experience.
Yeah, but this is the amazing part. They stole my identity when I was down there. They somehow got my stuff in. And normally I would have freaked out. And I was totally zen about it. I was just like, oh, all right, it's only money. And I eventually got it all back because I could show that here's my plane tickets. I was gone, it wasn't me. And they had gone into my credit union checking account, and then they were running out my credit cards and making minimum payments on my credit cards. And I was, when you're down there, you're out of touch with everything for a couple of weeks, right? So, but my point is I came back and I was totally, totally unfazed. I was like, oh, well, no big deal. I'll go get new cards and new, account numbers and all that. And I did all that, and it just didn't bother me at all. That really opened my eyes. That was really something that I was that much at peace with myself. And since that time, for the most part, I've been at peace with myself. We all have our moments. I can have my moments, but they're not like they used to be. And I don't go crazy for long periods of time. I catch it very quickly. And I really attribute that to all the work I did with ayahuasca and going after my demons, because that's what it's all about. I also want to mention that you can still do this work without the plant medicines. I worked with a personal coach for a number of years, and everybody else that she worked with who was going to do ayahuasca, she told them not to do it. But she told me to keep doing it. And it took me 4 or 5 years of coming to terms with both of them, and I finally figured out that they were both the same process, just different approaches. And I'm a hardhead. I'm a known hardhead. I mean, all I've ever known is megadose. When I was younger, there was no such thing as microdosing or any of that. Everything was just blow your brains out. That was it. Boom, boom. Whether mushrooms or LSD or all that.
I mean, I'm in a similar, because of my OCD and my issues, it was always macro. I tried the micro thing. It just doesn't have the same. And I don't want to be doing something consistently. Like I want to have a crazy experience and then kind of live that out. And then if I need it again, whatever. But I just feel like that's for me. And I know that doesn't work for everybody. I know people that have had great success microdosing, but I'm kind of with you on the whole macro, mega dose, whatever.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I'm sure you're familiar with Ralph Metzner.
Yeah, he passed away, right, a few years ago?
Yeah.
Because I was trying to get him on the podcast, and I think it was like right around the time where, So.
Yeah, I got to know him, and I worked with him a bit too. And he had a whole, I don't remember the specifics, but he had a whole classification about experiences about if you mega dose, you're doing this. If you microdose, it's another approach. But even when he was doing it back then, you still didn't really hear about microdoses. It wasn't until things went further along. And then Jim Fadiman did that Psychedelic Explorer's Guide. I tried to get him. I think I was you. I tried to get him on the show for you, but
I don't know what the deal is with that. I've sent him email. You sent him an email. Yeah. I know we had somebody, this Adam Bramlage guy who's from the same area as us. I know he does a lot of stuff with them. I don't know what the deal is. I would love to have him on. And actually, I reread Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test. I think he's in the beginning when they're in the courtroom.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think that's the same Jim Fadiman.
Yeah, he's a good friend. If I ever told you this story, I won't go off too much on it.
Well, Jim, you're welcome on the show anytime if you happen to see this.
We love you, man.
Which I doubt you will, but you are welcome on the show.
I interviewed him on the Psychedelic Salon for that book. His uncle Clifton was a literary legend. He started like one of the very first big book clubs. So Clifton was instrumental in starting the Santa Barbara Writers Conference, where I've been for 36 years. So Jim came to me and he sat in my workshop as my student for a week, and I didn't know who he was. And he kind of became my teacher's pet. He's a good writer. And he spent the whole week. And then when he was getting ready to leave, he came up and he gave me his novel called The Other Side of Hate, H-A-I-G-H-T. And I looked at it and I looked at him and I said, oh my God. I said, you're one of us, aren't you? And he goes, oh yeah. And then, we've been close friends ever since. So I've gone to see him speak. We keep in touch vicariously. He just reached out to me a few days ago. He was congratulating on my writing stuff, on the awards I got. And
yeah, I saw that. Congratulations. That's awesome, man.
No, thank you. Yeah, it's good. My back to fiction, right?
Well, I mean, I know you in the past you've mentioned one of your I don't even know what you would call him. Just somebody that helped you along was Ray Bradbury, I think you met. Yeah.
You bet. Yeah. Ray, he was my, I call him my writing fairy godfather. He gave me a blurb for my first short story collection. I got to hang out with him a lot. He kicked off the Santa Barbara Conference for 37 years. And Jim Fadiman's wife was Ken Kesey's girlfriend. They're still married now. So but I got the connection from Jim.
Ken Kesey, what a wild man, huh? I mean,
yeah,
it doesn't get more wild than that.
That's Mr. Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test.
Well, right? I guess maybe what's his face? His partner and the driver of the bus. I'm drawing a blank.
Yeah. Cassidy.
Neil Cassidy.
Yeah. So here's another little side story. Lorenzo calls me Cassouac. Cassouac. He calls me Cassouac because he says I'm crazy like Cassidy, but I'm a writer like Kerouac. Well, my mom's been gone 20 years now, but when my historical novel came out, I had a huge book signing, and Lorenzo met my mom. And he said that to my mom. My mom says, oh no, he's a much better writer than Kerouac. But he's
Nice.
to this
I mean,
day.
yeah, I mean, I liked On the Road, but you definitely have. I don't know. I like your style a lot. I mean, I'm being honest. Like, I'm trying to think. Like, I wouldn't compare them, but
No.
you definitely have. He kind of has more. You have more of like you're attuned to the metaphysics of things. He's kind of more attuned to the historical nature of things, if
Mhm.
that makes sense. But
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. It's a good person to be compared to, though, regardless, right?
I'll take it. But On the Road was really sort of like an amphetamine fueled journey. And it's interesting because Neil Cassidy, what in the book, what I think he called him Moriarty in the book,
Yeah, Moriarty. Yep.
right? Right. So Moriarty, Neil Cassidy was the driver in On the Road, which was like really
Is it
the
Dean
voice of the.
Moriarty? I think that's what Dean
Yeah,
Moriarty.
you are correct.
Yeah.
You get an A. You get an A in literature, son. Um, he drove the car in that cross country trip, which was sort of like the voice, the edge of the Beat Generation. And then he drove the bus, the further bus, and so he's like
I was
the
just gonna say
transition
that
guy.
there's a Grateful Dead documentary where they're talking. I think Jerry's talking, and he's talking about Neil Cassidy driving the bus, and he's just driving through all the red lights, just whacked out of his mind, and hitting, not hitting anybody, not getting in any accidents, just like flowing through everything, almost like everything else slowed down, and he's just like doing his thing.
Yeah. I don't know if we've talked about this before or not, but have you ever heard of Stan Krippner?
I don't. That name does not ring a bell.
Stan brought the shaman Rolling Thunder to the Grateful Dead. He's best buddies with Mickey Hart. And I met Stan, gosh, 20 years ago, 25 years ago. And he went to his agent. He really tried to help me get my historical novel, Land Without Evil, published. It didn't go through, but he really went to bat for me. So after a couple of months, I sent him a copy of my short story collection that Bradbury blurbs called The Small Dark Room of the Soul. And I sent it to him, and I said, this probably isn't your cup of tea, but I really appreciate the fact that you went to bat for me, and so I just wanted to show my appreciation. Well, like a month later, I get a postcard from him. Bradbury was right. Oh my God, I love your stuff. La la la. He's going on and on and on and on. So I send him my books when I get them, and he loves them. I'll send him books as a gift, and he gives me these great reviews on Amazon, right? And we become really, really close. He's probably one of the biggest fans of my writing. I mean, what an honor, right?
That's awesome, man. Yeah, hell yeah.
He had you can get me back on track here in a minute, but he had to do a tribute for some journal. Now he ran the Maimonides Dream Research Institute back in the 70s. He used to do thought projection experiments at Grateful Dead concerts. And he's a
I know about
leading,
that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's Stan.
Yeah, that's cool.
So a few months ago, he asked me. He had to have it was like a tribute to him for this psychological journal, and part of it was written by Sidian Morningstar Jones, who was Rolling Thunder's grandson, and this other guy. And Stan got a hold of me and he said, I have to do this thing, and they've given me 60 pages, and it's all chaos. And it needs to be done at 12 pages. What will it cost me? I said, well, I normally charge $50 an hour, but I'll do it for you for 20. So I got it, and it took me 2 full days, but I did it, and I didn't charge him anything. He's like 94, 95 now.
Yeah, dude, you're a good guy. I was figuring that's where it was headed.
He was stoked. I also have another novel called Nothing, based on my nephew Jordy, who's the video game rock star. I told you about him. And Stan let me make him a character. Stan's a big character in the book. And so he let me make him a character in the book. Now, when I did that whole rewrite of that thing for that journal, it was uncredited. They got byline, which is fine with me. But at the very end of it, at the very end of the piece that I did, I was doing a little thing about other interests in Stan's life. And at the end of it, I put, he was also a major character in the novel Nothing, written by Matthew Pallamary. So I got my name in there at the point.
Nice.
Stan's a legend.
Yeah.
He's a real great guy.
Yeah, I know about those experiments, so I mean that makes sense. I'll have to go back and look back into it. But yeah, I remember those experiments at those dead shows.
If you look on YouTube, there's a video a friend of mine did. It's Stan reconnecting with Mickey Hart. It's maybe 20 minutes long, and they talk about all the stuff that he did with the dead. So it's
makes sense. I feel like Mickey kind of had those vibes in the later years from, like, obviously they've always done the drums, and you get into the Rhythm Devils, and there's a very more of a shamanic vibe to what's going on up there.
Absolutely. I got to go 2000, I think. The American Booksellers Association was in LA, and I got invited to a private party that Mickey put on at the Hollywood Athletic Club. And he had his whole band there and the African drummers and all that. And I got to be like right up there on this, like, face to the stage and sit through the whole show. It was amazing. All the African drummers, he had must have had a half a dozen of them. All these different weird African drummers playing with these weird things and all that.
Yeah.
It was really something.
I would love to see them or anybody I know that they just did their residency, but the Sphere, man, that looks like quite the experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
Quite the experience. One call back, and then we'll get back on track here. That
Sure.
The paste that I was talking about, the Watoto from True Hallucinations, is called Virola paste. VIROLA.
Oh yeah.
And it's, I guess, the sap from a nutmeg plant.
Okay.
And it contains DMT and 5-MeO DMT, supposedly. Mm-hmm. So that's what they were hunting initially when they went down to Colombia, La Chorrera, and they eventually stumbled upon all those mushrooms, which ended up being the Amazonians that people, the strain that most people. Yeah, I mean, I think not to get too deep, but I remember recently I listened to a podcast. It was a Hamilton Morris episode where he was talking to the guy that developed the penis envy strain. And I guess it was from those Amazonians that it was kind of like an abort, and he kept manipulating it, and that's kind of where that whole thing kind of came from. So I thought that was kind of interesting. So back to the dieta. Now, how many people, when you do these ceremonies and you go down there, roughly, does it vary every time you go? Is there roughly the same amount of people every time? Like, what's going on? Is it familiar faces? Are they different? What's going on with that?
Well, we have a crew from the LA area that goes down with us. So if it tops out, probably 19 people is tops. But now we were going every year for a long time. Now we're going every 2 years. And my leadership role in that has grown from just being into it. But like, I went down right after 9/11. There were only 9 of us that time. I mean, it was like 9/11 September. We went down in the beginning of October. So that was a very surreal experience. I was going through LAX, and they were National Guard, locked and loaded. And I mean, it was intense. And then before we came back from the jungle, toward the end of my last journey, somebody down there had heard, a Spanish guy, a Peruvian, had heard that there was an anthrax plague in the United States. I don't know if you remember, I'm a little older and all that, but.
Oh, no, dude, I do remember that. I remember I was in high school, I think, when.
Yeah.
I do remember. So what year would I have been? I think probably like a sophomore, junior, but I do remember because we, everybody's following, I think in like health class, we were like following it and stuff too. So.
Yeah. Okay. So, somebody heard something on the radio. They told it to somebody else, and this is all in Spanish. Well, so by the time it got to us, just before the last journey, we were basically told that there's an anthrax plague in the United States. Well, guess what? All my visions were like thermonuclear explosions, and, hellish, uh, like that. And we didn't know what the hell was going on until we got back to civilization. The other interesting thing was when you're in a foreign country and you see the news, it's a lot different than what you see up here. A lot of it's not censored. Um, so that was a very surreal experience. Now, interestingly enough, the last time I went down, which was about a year and a half ago, we had 13, there were 6 of us, and there were 13 Israeli women, 1 Ukrainian guy and 1 Russian guy. And we all got along great. I mean, there was no bullshit in any of that. But to be down there with all those people like that, and that was just before all this crazy war stuff that's going on now with Palestine and all that. So that's been an interesting thing to be in the middle of that with people that I know. And I don't take sides. I feel for the innocents. But I've had some fallings out, not with the Israelis. We're all good. But I got a Palestinian guy I know, and he got really upset at me because I wouldn't take sides. But it's a great experience to go down, and it's sometimes I've been down there with some Australians. So depending on the numbers,
Yeah, man, that's
we have a
tough.
mixed crew.
That's an ancient hate right there. That's like
Oh yeah,
original hate.
Yeah.
Like back to tribalism.
You bet.
That's a tough one.
bet.
I think I mentioned that was nutmeg sap. It's not. I just wanted to clarify that. I was reading something off Dennis McKenna's website, and it had that underneath it. But it's Varola is the plant that they make that sap or paste from or whatever. So
I saw a presentation on that. When I met Terrence, I met him at the ethnobotany seminars. I don't know if you're familiar with them or not.
I think who mentioned that? Somebody in the past, and I have a good memory.
Might have been me.
Tom Lane. Because he was talking about
okay.
Evan Richard Schultes and Wasson and all those guys being there and mucking it up with them. So
Yeah, so the guy who organized all that, he was my mentor. He was the one who took me into the jungle for the first time. And I got to do. I did one in San Francisco in '96, and then in '98 I did it at the Maya ruins in Uxmal, and then '99, 2000, and 2001 were all in the Maya ruins of Palenque.
yes, that's the one where we were talking about Casey Hardison, right? Wasn't that who?
That's right. That's where I met. That's where I met Casey. Yeah,
that's where you
Casey.
ran that experiment, right? Or was?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I was part of it. 2CT7. It was one of Sasha Shogun's specialties.
How did that go?
Oh, it was wild. It was fun. Then, so at the ethnobotany seminars, there was Terrence, Anna and Sasha Shogun, Paul Stamets, Giorgio Samarini. If you're familiar with Giorgio's work, he did a lot of groundbreaking stuff with Iboga. A number of other people. Ralph Metzner was there. They would all come. There would be a whole host of Sasha Shogun proteges, and they would all bring their latest wares. And then you'd have lectures. Oh, and Christian Reich. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He just passed away a couple of years ago, too.
Not familiar with him. Yeah, I mean, as far as like clandestine pharmacologists, I think that, like Shulgin, maybe, who is the, well, he's not clandestine, but David Nichols, who makes a lot of the compounds or has in the past. He did the DMT for Strassman's experiments in the 90s. Yeah.
So they would all be there. All the chemists would come. They'd have all their stuff. Everybody was trying. And there were artists and musicians. And there would be morning lectures, afternoon lectures, and evening lectures. And so, as a matter of fact, I recorded everything religiously. I had like 4 boxes of cassette tapes. Sasha and Christian was Germany's leading expert in shamanism. And Albert Hoffman was like his not by blood, but Albert Hoffman was like his grandfather. They were very close. And Christian actually spent a few years living with the Lacandon Indians around the ruins there and figuring out the baiche brew that they made and all that stuff. So we had this whole thing, and like I said, that's where I met Casey and some other people, and it started this whole thing. It was a really happening thing. We didn't realize how happening it was until later. But we got to try everything. I was tight with Ann and Sasha. She inspired me to do more shadow work. And you'd get to just hang out for the whole week and lectures and lectures and lectures. So I took all those boxes of tapes. And when Lorenzo said, I want to start the psychedelic salon, I handed him over. I said, here you go, buddy. You're off and running. Like I said, Metzner was there, Paul Stamets, all those guys. It was really, I feel so lucky to have been part of that and been in the middle of it. And life-changing.
It sounds like it. I mean, you were around at a time kind of where you bridged the gap between a lot of those old original guys and kind of the new age people in like the 90s and early 2000s that were doing stuff, which is very interesting because, I mean, you got to kind of see it all, right?
And I was in the middle of it, and I was part of the tribe. And we used to get a lot of stuff. Like we used to get all the 5-MeO we wanted from labs in China before it was illegal. And then there was this whole thing that went on where they would do one of Sasha's recipes. Not many people would know about it. We'd all be trying it. People would send us stuff through the mail, regular, almost like a subscription. And then once it got to be popular, it would become illegal. Then they would take it and like tweak one atom or tweak one molecule one way or the other and make a whole other substance with a different thing. And then that would go out and we'd work with that for a while, and then that would become illegal. And there was this whole cat and mouse thing that was going on for years like that.
What's going on with cannabis now too? Like the states where cannabis isn't legal, you have that Delta 8, like I remember we were just on vacation in Florida, and they have medical in Florida, but you see a lot of these gas stations, Delta 8, Delta 8, Delta 8, because, I've actually never tried Delta 8. I don't know anything too much about it. Oh,
there was
go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, there was a lady who was a witch. She said she was a witch down there in the ethnobotany seminars, and she had this Delta 9 oil. Oh my God. It was amazing. I mean, just a few drops like men, and you were like buzzing. Not like buzzing like Stone passing out, but I mean, just like, woo, like that. It was really amazing stuff. Anyway, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I was I was thinking about this earlier, and I forgot to ask, is there ever any cannabis usage in these ayahuasca ceremonies, or is that, because I the reason why I ask is for me personally, like when I'm trying to plateau out or normalize a little bit so I can kind of process things a little bit more during like a heavy psilocybin experience, it's always nice to have a little cannabis. It kind of keeps you, straight for a little bit. I mean, maybe that's just me, I don't know, but and I know alcohol does the exact opposite with psilocybin. If you drink alcohol, it's most likely gonna either dampen or completely ruin your trip.
So there are traditions that use cannabis. I think the Daime might use it, Santo Daime. But the guys that I work with say no. And what they say is that ayahuasca is a mother plant and cannabis is female, sinsemilla. And what they say is that mother gets jealous. Get that bitch out of here. No way. And so when I'm working with, I love my cannabis. I go on and off. Right now I'm on a break because I was way too chronic during the writers' conference. Too much coffee, too much cannabis. But so I'm on a break.
And have you ever done ayahuasca with cannabis? I mean, I know you're saying these ceremonies, but have you ever done it aside from, these?
I did it once. I did a ceremony and I was offered some, and I thought, well, I should try it just to see. And it helped me get to sleep more. But when I'm going to work with ayahuasca, usually I stop smoking it about a week before. And then usually after a lot of good work with it, I won't smoke again for sometimes a couple of months.
Your dreams probably get nuts too, huh? Right, heading right into
yeah.
yeah.
Oh yeah. Whenever I take a break from cannabis, my dreams get really nuts for a while when I come back. So I tried it that way. But the thing is, especially with the jungle diet, it's all about purification. And so the cleaner you can be, they suggest doing the diet maybe a week before you go and do the regular dieta. And then they say that as long as you have been on the dieta, you should stay on the dieta after you come back as best you can. It's harder when you're traveling on planes and all that. And it's not as strict as, just oatmeal boiled and all that stuff. But they say, and I believe this, that the more purified you are and clear going in, the more you will benefit from the experience. And I think that, I think there's a lot of truth to that. And that's what when I'm talking to people and counseling them, I recommend that very, very strongly. But there are traditions that use it.
What
But
about so is cannabis big? I mean, I don't know anything about South America in terms of like their drug policies and stuff like that, aside from like the indigenous stuff. Is cannabis something that is used regularly down there? Is it kind of rare? Like,
It's regular in more civilized areas, not in the jungle. Uh, I don't know that it even will grow in the jungle, because tropical stuff has a whole different environment, a whole different microclimate. I've had people when I was in Pucallpa offer to sell me some. I wouldn't buy it. In fact, the one time this guy was trying to sell me all this stuff, I found out that they were trying to set us up. The cops were like waiting, right? I know better. No
are
way.
they strict about that kind of stuff down there, the cops?
Well, if they can throw you in jail, they can get money out of you,
True.
right? Not to be, cliched or anything like that, but there's a lot of corruption. And they can put you in jail for a long time.
Oh, I know it's tough down there. Maurice was he proposed to his fiancée. She's from Ecuador, and they went to like the Galapagos Islands. That's when they had all that uprising stuff a few months ago, and he got stuck.
Oh yeah,
because they took over like that TV station there, and like it was a whole thing. So yeah, there's no doubt that there's a lot of corruption and a lot of messed up political things happening, and all that. So my other question too is, have you ever done ayahuasca and then smoked DMT? Again, this probably wouldn't obviously be in one of these ceremonies because they probably wouldn't allow it or want that near it. No.
I don't. I knew some guys that were doing 5-MeO after ayahuasca. For me, I think it's overkill.
Oh, for sure. But that's what I'm just curious what the feedback was.
Yeah, I mean, so we went through a couple of years where the shaman was putting in small amounts of datura in the brew.
Yeah, that's what I think we talked with the Brumancia. Yeah, the mixture. But that's dangerous, right? Doesn't that have some sort of negative health?
Yeah,
like your heart and stuff like that.
Yeah, in the jungle they call it toei. And if you're going to work with it, it can kill you. You can lose your mind. Here in San Diego, you can find it growing close to the ground. And every few years you hear about these kids that took it and went out into the desert and they lost their mind or died or got killed or something.
I mean, datura is everywhere. I think it's probably one of the most prevalent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I discovered, which I didn't know, I'll get back to that story in a minute. I got a good story to tell about that. But the ones on the ground that come up, which are the most toxic ones, they call that the devil's trumpet. And the ones that hang from the trees, the Brugmansia, are called the angel's trumpet. I didn't realize that distinction until a few years ago when I was researching it. So they were putting just a few leaves in the whole brew. And I could tell energetically, and the effects of it was different. But after a couple of years of experimenting, the shaman said, we're not going to do that anymore. We don't need it. The chacruna is enough. We don't need it. But check this out. When we were working with it, at one time, I was a sitter. I didn't take. I wanted to be a sitter because I wanted to experience it, from that whole side. And this guy wigged out. And we had to take him out of the circle. And we had to take him to another room, because that's what happens if somebody gets too out of control. And he was like screaming in my face for like 3 hours. And I was working with him. And the guy that I was working with, who was sitting with me trying to take care of this guy, figured out that this guy who was flipping out was stuck in the birth canal. So we birthed him. We got him through the birth canal.
Sounds like some Stan Groff stuff right there.
Yeah, it kind of was, yeah. So then later, the leader followed up with him. Well, it turns out when this guy was born, they gave his mother scopolamine. Scopolamine is in Datura, and they were giving it to women in childbirth. So obviously the scopolamine that was in that Datura, that was in that brew, triggered this birth.
Yeah, that's crazy.
We got him through it. And then he was changed. He shifted in a positive way.
They give scopolamine to people that are like seasick too. That's what those bracelets are, I think, or whatever.
Yeah, very low dose. So a few years ago...
Yeah, definitely not the same. They're not giving people massive doses.
So a few years ago, I got up one morning and I logged on, and there was all this weird, bizarre stuff on Facebook from a buddy of mine. And I was worried. It was like crazy nonsense. So I called him up and I says, "Hey, bro, what's all that crazy stuff? What's going on? You okay?" He's like, "What are you talking about?" I said, "What's all that crazy stuff you posted?" He says, I don't know what you're talking about." I said, "Go take a look. We're on the phone, right?" He goes and he looks. He's like, "Oh my God." So to make a long story short, he was clearing some of the land where he was living to make a garden. And there was a bunch of datura. And he was picking it up. He had a short sleeve shirt on in his arms and putting it in plastic bags, trash bags, to get rid of it. Well, after he talked to me and he looked around, aside from all the nutty stuff he put on Facebook, he had no memory of any of it. He found like he'd put his shoes in the refrigerator. Everything was just all topsy-turvy. He was totally freaked out because he totally blacked out and didn't remember all the nutty stuff he did. That was an eye-opener for me. So
yeah, I mean, that's so like nightshades and tropanes. That was, you look into the Greek and the ancient Greeks and the Romans, and that's all the kind of stuff that they were mixing into their wine. There's, you're gonna see stuff that isn't there. Who did I have a conversation? I think it was Andrew Gallimore, where we were talking about how, I don't think that there's one better or the other, but I was just asking, like, do tryptamines or the conventional psychedelics, are they just like, they're enhancing the world around us? You're not really seeing too many things that aren't really there. But a tropane or something like scopolamine or a nightshade or something, you can definitely have hallucinations of things that are not there, similar to somebody that's like super drunk or whatever. So is that kind of where these people get the idea of like these gods and things like that? I think it's way more complex than that, but just that idea alone is kind of unnerving to me. I wouldn't, it doesn't sound great, right? I mean,
No.
Maybe that's just me, but that's not like a pleasant experience.
It's not something to be messed with. The ones in the jungle who work with it are specialists. And I talked to a guy at length about his experience with it. This is some years ago. And he was gone for like 3 days. He didn't know which end was up. And then there was something that I think they had something, that tincture or something that they put in his eyes that brought him back. But he said still to this day, I mean, this is a few years ago, some years back, but he said to this day he's still haunted by like phantasms and things, you know what I mean? Like that. He said he's never been the same and he regrets having done it. And like I said, out here you'll find out that these kids that go out in the desert and they lost their mind, or they lose it, or they kill each other, and you really check out. So not for me.
Well,
I
that's what
do admit
the book Witch's Ointment.
yeah.
Yeah, all that. That's I mean, the witch culture, all the early magic and alchemy stuff. A lot of that stuff's kind of tied together. I'm sure that obviously there's a reason why people were doing it, and obviously maybe there's some understanding there. But to me, based on my own experiences, and I have tried some tropanes, not my cup of tea at all. So
Yeah, I'm sure you know about the witch's broomstick, don't you?
yeah, so I tried to get Tom Hatsis on a while back, and it just didn't work out timing wise, and some things came up. But yeah, I mean, I find all that stuff interesting.
Yeah, it's all interesting because wherever you are geographically, you are affected by the plants that grow in that area. So cultures, like the huichol and peyote, or ayahuasca in the jungle, the culture grows up around whatever happens to be in the area that's psychoactive. So the different cultures and traditions, I don't want to say dictated by the plants, but it certainly influences and guides how the cultural mythologies and all those things grow out of that. It's like you can travel along the Mexican border. The food, and same with China. Chinese food is different depending on the province that you get it from. And the same with Mexico. There's Tijuana Mexican food, and then if you go south of the border in Arizona, or even Texas, Juarez, and all that, it's different because there's different flora and fauna. There's different types of peppers and all those kind of things that go up. So it influences how things are gone and what are popular and what do they really have at their disposal. One of the things I was telling somebody the other day, like we're talking about Neil Cassidy there and speed. Well, my old man was a codeine addict. Well, he was wounded in World War II. Well, all they had then was like codeine and alcohol and weed. They didn't have much. For me personally, I was lucky when I came up. There was LSD and then mushrooms and now Sasha Shogun and all the research chemicals. I mean, now it's blown wide open.
Your favorite glue?
Yeah, Elmer Wellwood contact cement and Elmer's contact cement. Those were the two.
Or markers. I think that was more of my era, was those smelly markers.
Yeah. But that now all bets are off. There's so many different things, and for me, I think things are maybe a little bit out of control. I don't want to offend anybody, but you can't swing a cat around without hitting a psychedelic integration specialist these days.
Dude, offend away, bro. That's what we've been doing lately. We've
been
offending people. I've been getting more hate mail than ever, so feel free to say whatever you want, because that's the trajectory we're on.
They can hate me all they want. I sometimes refer to myself as like the psychedelic McDonald's. I won't say billions served, but I've taken hundreds of people on their first journeys, and I've been doing that stuff for long. And so when I see these people come up and they say, so-and-so is a certified psychedelic integration specialist. Well, yeah, great. But who certified them? Who set them up as I am the authority, And I'm talking from my experience of years and years and years. I mean, I've got over 50 years of experience with psychedelics. So I look at a lot of them, and in my mind, I'll go, they're a bunch of rookies, right? And I hear some of them speaking with authority, and in my mind, I'm thinking they're talking out their ass. Not all of them. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of legitimacy out there.
Dude, I mean, you're hitting on so like, I don't want to offend anybody either, but there's a very specific type of person that you're kind of talking about that seems to be, they want to be the seasoned person, but they're not. They're kind of new to the game, so they're just kind of catching up. Maybe they feel like they have something to prove or something like that. And like, dude, I was like 14, 15 reading On the Road, Electric Fluid Acid Test, experimenting with my mind, at an early age. So it's like I've been doing
Yeah.
this stuff for over 20 years myself, and I'm not even that old. I'm not even 40, you know? So when I see these people, I have the same reaction you kind of do, because you can, it's a vibe that it's, you know, like I said, it's almost like over compensating or something like that. I don't know.
It's, they'll come at me, and I'm just speaking in generalizations here, but they'll come at me and I can help you and I can heal you. And I'm thinking to myself, you're just a fetus. I could educate you 50 times over. You don't even know what you're talking about. And they come up with authority. Again, I think there's some need for it. And I suppose the way things are getting out of control now, some regulation is good. But I mean, I hear them and they're this guru. And I'm like, why? Because somebody gave you 8 classes because they say they're their authority?
Right. Well, that's the big thing now too is, and you know, I actually am creating my own philosophy course just on basic philosophy, because I feel like it's kind of a overlooked, underrated thing as far as thinking tools like epistemology, theory of knowledge, where does it come from, ontology, you know, theory of being, teleology, theory of purpose. Is there a purpose? You know, things like that. I don't think people really think about that when they're thinking about these topics. So I am creating a class, but what I was going to say is I'm going to take a dump on all these other people that have all these classes and modules, because I don't feel they're for money and profit. I don't, I'm offering my things for free because I'm just fed up with seeing, like I mentioned before, the ridiculous rhetoric and people just believing anything. But I wanted to ask you, since we're kind of on this topic, I didn't necessarily want to go here, but we are here. What's your thoughts on the whole MAPS, MDMA stuff, and them the FDA shooting down the trials? You have a lot of people, you have the psychedelic hipsters that are against MAPS and against the things, and then you have the MAPS people and the people that have kind of tried to push this along for a while now, fed up with stuff. So like, where are you on it? Do you have any opinion on it, or?
Yeah, I have mixed feelings about it. So I was supporting MAPS way back. And I've taken hundreds of people on their 5-MeO journeys. I took Casey Hardison on his first 5-MeO journey. A number of people. I never took a cent from anybody. I sat with them. I guided them. I held the space. I took them through the journey. But you have all these specialists, and they're charging all this money because they're the guru. And there were people that I were working with that were getting out of control. And I saw that they were getting out of control, and I removed myself from them. I went away. I said, you guys are out of control. And sure enough, about 4 months after that, this one person decided he was birthing people in a hot tub and giving them 5-MeO in a hot tub. And he was not in integrity. And somebody got upset, and to make a long story short, somebody killed themselves. They took a big hit and submerged themselves in a hot tub and killed themselves. And of course, I got drawn back in because we had to do what's the word I'm looking for? It'll come to me in a second. But we had to step in.
Was that the person that was on Hamilton's Pharmacopoeia that used to be like a OBGYN or something, and then they became somebody different?
Yeah, that was before him.
Oh, okay.
But he drives me nuts. Okay.
Yeah, a lot of people. He pissed a lot of people off online. Like, there's like Facebook forums dedicated to taking that guy down.
Yeah. So we had to step in because we had to be self-policing. And as a matter of fact, Ralph Metzner counseled me on how to handle the situation at the time. God, what's that word? It's driving me nuts. When you step in and you, it'll come in a second, or it'll come at 3:00 in the morning. But it was out of control.
Intervene.
Thank you. Intervention. Yes. Thank you. You get an A, dude. You're on your game there. I'm a space.
Sorry,
shot.
I had a brain fart for a second too. I realized you were searching for something and I wasn't.
Yeah. No. So, it got out of control. Now, I worked with the 5-MeO a lot for about 13 years. And then when that happened, I did a little ceremony, and I actually buried my pipe under a datura, a Brugmansia bush. Now I've worked with it on and off here and there. I had the opportunity a few years ago. Somebody had the true toad venom.
So what's your take on that? Because there's people that'll fight. Oh, it's got to be the toad venom, blah blah blah. But obviously these things are becoming more. I don't know if it's endangered, but people are looking for these things, right? And I think even some of the cartels and stuff have now tried to get in on the action and stuff. So like Hamilton Morris did a whole episode about how to synthesize it and why synthesis is better. What's your take on that? I mean, obviously it's better for conservation to preserve the toad and not harm any animals, but like, what do you think there's any difference? And if not, then why do people make such a big deal about it?
There's a qualitative difference. Now, when I first heard about it, was at Ethnobotany seminars, 1998 in Uxmal. And these guys were like, yeah, you contact this laboratory in China and they'll send it to you. And I did. So my first experience with it was in May of 98. And it was pure synthesized 5-MeO. And it was profound. As the years have gone by, I've probably done the real toad venom maybe a half a dozen times. The real toad venom has the 5-MeO and it has the bufotenin in it. Qualitatively, it's a little different, but in essence, it's very similar. I mean, and I'm all about. There's two levels for me. There's what I call suborbital. This is my own vernacular. I call suborbital, where you feel the zone and you're in the zone. And then there's hyperspace, where you blast off. And the first time I did it, back in those days, you didn't have all those things you have today. So we would take a good, maybe, I think it was 10 milligrams, like a heaping Coke spoon on a bong hit. Bang. That would send you hyperspace. That's the only way for me. That's how I knew it. But I recently got turned on to some that was synthesized. It was synthesized from melatonin. It was in a vape pen. And you can draw on the vape pen and you can take one hit and go, and get pretty high suborbital. You want to take 2 or 3 more, you can hit hyperspace. You can really control the dose. Back then you couldn't control. It was either hyperspace or nothing. You couldn't really, go. So the vape pen, with that way to be able to control it's easier to work with, because if you're guiding somebody, you can say, take one good hit and then hang on to the pen, and then they can get and get a feel for it, as opposed to just getting their brains blown out. And then, okay, you want some more? Yeah, okay, boom. What I found happening, and what I thought was happening with this guy we're talking about, is it's heart opening. You get this really loving feeling. And if somebody gives it to you, and then when they finally kind of come back and they see you standing there and you're the person that gave it to them, they think like you're a god.
Mama.
Yeah, exactly. And this guy that I worked with, who I obviously cut loose, and these other people that do it, they see these people come to them with all this loving thing. And of course, yes, I am the shaman. I have healed you, blah, blah. No, I brought you the experience, but it's the substance. I can guide you, but it's not me. I always tell people when in ayahuasca ceremonies, I'm not a healer. You're the healer. I can guide you. I can help you. I can counsel you, but you're doing the work. You're the healer, not me. And I don't think I ever went through this with you, but in the past, I went off on some people because they call me a shaman. I hate that. I don't want to hear it. And one time I went off on this guy on a show, and I ended up apologizing.
Well, I will say that that's common for Western or American people, whatever, to think that they're shamans. Like, you're not. Mm-hmm. You don't come from that culture. That's not. if anything, you can trace it back to maybe Eleusinian mysteries, and maybe you're one of the women preparing the brew, something like that. But that's a whole different thing. I think Western society's tradition is what we have now, which is just kind of like a hodgepodge. Have a good time if you can get it, and if not, like it's the government, kind of a thing. And theirs is definitely, it's just a whole different thing. I hate when people say that too. So you're not saying anything we haven't said on the show before, which with the whole white gringo shamans and whatever, so it's definitely something that we have talked about. I think we've talked about it with you too. And you've never given me the vibe that, you say you work with it. Like I would, that's why I like having you on, because I feel like you're so fascinated by the whole experience that you've immersed yourself in it, but you're very aware of your role in the whole thing, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, thank you. I quit making a big stink about it, because if I make a stink about it, I'm drawing too much attention to it. And even now I'll make that statement, and then I'll be on a show, and then I'll post it, and they'll go, Shaman Matthew Pallamary. And I'm like, but I'm just, call me that if you want. Call me late for dinner. Call me whatever you want.
We titled this one Psychedelics and Shamanism, but I'm not calling you a
That's
shaman.
fine.
We're talking about the actual, experience.
And my website says author, editor, shamanic explorer. I'm okay with that. But the whole shaman thing,
Somebody does, because you've mentioned, I think, taking people down. Somebody, Adrian, just asked in the comments, would love to have Matthew as a guide on a journey. Does he still do it? Do you still take people on journeys?
I do, technically out of the country.
Well, of course, but like, where would somebody contact you about, or at least maybe for a reference or something like that?
They can find me. And all anybody has to do is Google my name, and the first thing that comes up is my website. And then there's a contact form, and it'll email me. And if they come from you, I'll cut on some slack. But I have to be very careful. I swear to God, 3 or 4 times a day, somebody on Facebook is messaging me, I can get you all the stuff you want, blah blah blah. I got
dude,
shrooms,
you can't. Okay, so I know you're not on X. I know you used to be, because I think your Mystic Inc. or whatever I used to interact with a little bit on there. But if you post anything that says psychedelic on X now, or formerly known as Twitter, you'll get the bots coming. Hey, I'll offer you. Same thing. These bots are just out of control. Like, get the fuck out of the comments. Or like, I don't want to see this. It's not. You're not doing anybody favors. And if, let's just say they really are who they say they are, they're really trying to get people stuff, like, get more creative, because you're just going to get people in trouble. And that's like the antithesis of what should actually be happening. So,
yeah, I don't know you. You're looking for jail. I don't know you.
Yeah.
That stuff's not safe.
Yeah.
They can be legitimate with what they get.
Well, and the other thing too is with everything now, it's like, there's fentanyl. I mean, I've lost family members, I've lost friends, I've lost close people in my life to fentanyl. I'm talking laced Xanaxes and laced Coke, and not even heroin. So like, you got to be careful, and you got to test your shit. And if you're not doing it yourself, or synthesizing or growing or whatever, you better be sure you know who you're talking to and what's going on.
Yeah, I'm lucky. I have a very close friend. I can't mention his name, but he has a lab that specializes in testing. And whenever I hear of something and I know about it, I can get a full-on analysis of exactly what's in it. And now, as you mentioned, you just got to do it all the time, because you can't trust anything.
Yeah, I mean, it's changed a little bit here in Michigan. So I moved back to Michigan last year from the Chicago area. Okay. And in Ann Arbor, psilocybin's decriminalized. There's storefronts in a couple places, I think. So there's definitely movement on that, towards that direction. There's some church in Detroit, but I think they've shut it down a few times. But in terms of like all the other stuff, I wouldn't even dare, unless a close friend came to me or was in town or something like that, because it's just not worth the risk. I don't, and I don't know all the hippies that I used to know when I was still playing music and stuff. So that's where a lot of those stories and those experiences came from. So
The other thing is, you don't know if somebody's psychologically imbalanced to start with. I mean, before I work with anybody, they get a thorough screening. I want to know everything, not only what they're going on. Have you been through a breakup? Are you on medications? That's really critical with ayahuasca. You can't be messing around. You can get serotonin poisoning. You can go into convulsions. You can die. So the screening is very important. Or you can have somebody who seems like they're really normal, and then they get a hold of something.
So I actually have so like when I was younger, I don't remember because I have OCD, but I was taking, I think, Zoloft or something. And I'd eaten a big bag of mushrooms too. And I woke up like freezing and shaking. Like I had a great experience, but then like when the come down went like in the middle of the night, it was like, I feel like it was headed towards some sort of serotonin thing where I was like shaking and I couldn't stay warm, but it was like it was like hot out, it was like summer. So it's like, you got to be careful. So if you're taking SSRIs, you can't be doing, at least high doses, or you shouldn't be.
No, you shouldn't.
So
there was a guy there was a guy at the entheobotany seminars that took one of the research chemicals and they went into serotonin overload. They had to call paramedics. That was scary to watch.
Yeah, you can't mess around with that stuff. And especially, it's like it goes back to the old philosophy, like know thyself, know what's in your body now, know the interactions. I mean, now it's easy. You can look things up pretty easily. Back in the day when I was younger, and I know it's probably even further back for you in what you had access to, but we had Erwid. Or Arrowwood.
Yeah,
people.
Arrowwood,
So like
Arrowwood,
we used to go on and like, okay, so how much if we take this? Where does it plateau? You could literally read how the trip's going to kind of play out, assuming that you have what it says, or you have exactly what you think you have. That was the resource. So it's like, we definitely, it was a gamble at times, but like, nowadays, you can test your stuff, you can look online, you can look at experiences, you can watch videos, people talking about their experiences and doses. And so there's really no excuse now to have that happen. Do your research, do your homework, like anything else.
It's not something to be messed with. It all needs to have the utmost respect. And I always like to reiterate, it's just not for everybody. It's just not. Some people don't need it. Some people shouldn't even be near any of it. It takes a particular mindset. And even me, I researched ayahuasca for 10 years before I found it. And I read everything I could get at the time. So this was like 1990, I was going to the UCSD library and going to the medical section and finding articles by Schultes and other people about plants and all that. And I researched everything that I could before I finally found it. And then when I found it, I found a good, reliable guide who had already done all the cutting edge. They went through their own, dangers of scams and people who did not have integrity until they found good people. And I've been lucky to plug into that. And that's what's kept me going all along. But anybody that comes out of me out of left field, because, I was on coast to coast. I'm on, 2.5 million live listeners. AM,
dude,
right?
I got that like alien DMT, bro. Come on, man.
Yeah. Exactly.
So I, even though I know a ton about all this stuff, obviously I've done most of the psychedelics. I've never done DMT still to this day. And I've never, I've been offered it once. It was at a fish show. We were in high school. We were taking Greyhound bus from Chicago to Detroit, and the dude that offered it was selling Molly, but he was also like showing us his gross, lump on his arm where he shot a hot dose and it missed, and they had to cut off part of his. So it's like, I'm not buying DMT from this guy, so it's like, that's the only time it's been offered to me. And I always said that I would be willing to try it if it found, like, kind of what you were saying, like if it found me, the right circumstances presented itself. But I'm not out there like, oh, I got to do this, I got to find it, I got to synthesize, like it's not like that. I'm not desperate. I know what I've done, and it's not the same, and I know it's not the same, but I've done very high doses of psilocybin to the point where I've met entities and tryptamine palaces and things like that. So it's kind of, it's a couple molecules away when it breaks down in the gut, psilocin.
I don't like smoking it. I say smoking it is a soundbite for ayahuasca. I like the 5-MeO, but the NN-DMT, I just don't like it. I don't like the way it makes me feel. It's like a soundbite. I'd rather just drink the brew and spend 5 or 6 hours tripping balls and puking than take that hit. To me, it tastes like dry cleaning fluid or something.
Yeah, people always say it tastes like plastic or flowers or like weird. Lots of different people have said different things. Have you ever smoked salvia?
Yeah. This younger guy turned me on to it. In fact, it was at one of the ethnobotany seminars, and he made such a big deal out of it that after I smoked it, I was like, he was all, and I was like, big deal. It's a lot like DMT. It was kind of a fun little thing. I also did it with a quid, put it in your mouth. And
yeah, I mean, supposedly, I've never masticated it, but that's supposedly the way to do it, because you're constantly reigniting the experience, as opposed to like when I've smoked it. Well, first of all, I haven't smoked it in a long time. I smoked it when I was like a senior in high school, and then maybe a couple times in my early 20s, and weird experiences like falling over portals of never-ending, stuff, and constantly repeating the same thing, and like weird experiences. But that was when you could buy it. I think it was like 32X, these like little like wood chip looking things that you could buy from the pipe store. There's people, things were the Wild West back then. I remember other people doing this stuff called red rocks, where it was like incense, but it had like opium in it. So they'd do like a hot knife with, I'm like, what are you guys doing? This is not, but yeah, but salvia is interesting. And I don't know if I would do it now, but I would have liked to have done the quid, kind of like what you're saying, because I feel like that's the way to do it.
It's a gentler, like you said, it's sustained, and it's a gentler immersion as opposed to just boom. It was fun smoking it, but I think that the even then, that was in '98, so I already had 25 years of intense LSD experiences and mushroom experiences, so I'm just not easily impressed.
Well, that one, though, people flip out on that one, too. You got to be careful with salvia. Like, there's tons of videos of people losing their minds, jumping out windows, and all sorts of shit. I know, actually, I think it's still legal in pipe stores or head shops in South Carolina. I think that's like the only state or something. But
yeah,
it's a New World entheogen, too. You can only find it, I think, in Hualta or the mountains over there.
I had a plant somebody gave me, and I grew it for a while, but I killed it. I was going to cultivate it just for giggles.
Yeah, it's a type of a sage, if I'm correct.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very fragile plant.
Yeah.
Like I said, I ended up killing it. I tried, but when I smoked it, it was fun, but it just wasn't, like with ayahuasca and mushrooms, you can really go deep and stay deep for a while.
Last time we had Andrew Gallimore on, we were talking about, so he was saying that there was, because you know how they're doing the extended state DMT stuff through method of like how they would administer anesthesia or anesthetics. He was talking about salvinorin B, methoxymethyl, something like that, where it's like a similar one, but salvia. And that one sounds like, who's crazy enough to do that? It's like going into outer space without a spacesuit or something.
Yeah, I'm not inclined to do much. There's the old Alan Watts saying, you've gotten the message, you can hang up the phone now. Now, if I do something more often than not, it's because somebody asked me to guide them on a journey. And
Yeah, that's so. In nature's the ultimate pharmacologist, right? So something I ponder is like, given AI and this technology we have, and they're trying to create all these different compounds and offshoots, and I always wonder, like, do you think that they're going to create something that's just going to be like blows DMT out of the water? And if so, what does that mean, kind of a thing,
I have gone so far on ayahuasca. Well, I was in multiple other dimensions, gone. I don't know if there's anything that can top that. And again, it's prehistoric tradition. You go super deep, and you go and you challenge yourself, physically. I mean, you could be. Some of the best visions I've had is right after I purge. It's sent me in a whole nother place. One time, one of my first times in the jungle, and the shaman was trying to explain. He said, I'm here in the jungle, and all these people with like PhDs, highly educated, are all coming to me, right? And here I am with a guy with holes in my pants and not wearing shoes, and all these PhDs, highly educated people are coming to me. And he said, I was trying to explain to them how it works, and I got mixed up between English and Spanish and Quechua. Now he's telling us the story. And what came out of his mouth was, your head's up your ass. It took him 10 minutes to say that. He was laughing so hard. And he got me laughing so hard, I lost my breath. And I went off someplace else. I was gone. I don't know how long I was gone for. I was laughing so hard. I totally lost my breath, and I was high as a kite. And it was a really magically wonderful moment, because I was just laughing so hard. It launched me into a whole nother dimension. And he couldn't stop laughing. I swear to God, it took him 15 minutes to get the punchline out. He couldn't say it. And so, there's the old cliche saying that history repeats itself. Well, if you look into the past, you can maybe get a sense of what's going to happen in the future, because it goes in cycles. And I think it goes in spiraling cycles. So I'm always been fascinated with what happened in the past to get a sense of what's coming. And I think that there's a lot of wisdom, and God only knows what's gone on before we came along. I mean, there could have been races of humanity 100 times over. We'll never know for sure. You just don't know. So I think there's really great wisdom in that. And the other thing, I was saying this to somebody, I think I said this on Coast to Coast the other night. I lost my train of thought. Sorry, I got in passion mode there.
No, you're good. No,
it's ancient wisdom.
Yeah,
it's ancient wisdom, and it. They're having all these new discoveries in quantum physics. Well, the old shamans are like, "Where you guys been the past 1,000 years?" Right? They already knew that stuff. Just like they knew about the salt and
like we've been talking superposition and double slit for the last few millennia.
Yeah. And they're like, where you been? That's old hat, right? So
Schrodinger's cat. Come on, we got Schrodinger's jaguar.
There you go. Yeah. Ralph Metzner used to call 5-MeO the jaguar.
Interesting. Have you ever seen those videos of the jaguars chewing on the vines and like tripping out like a catnip?
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah, makes you want to be a jaguar. You drink enough ayahuasca, you will be one, right?
But to kind of tie it back a little, I think we were talking about the MAPS, the MDMA. Obviously, it's for PTSD and veterans.
Oh, yeah.
Do you think? I mean, look, I think all these things should be legal, and then also kind of like how cannabis is, and like kind of regulated. Now look, there's problems with that too. There was just an article about some place in California that's got tons of pesticides and fungicides and all sorts of shit in their cannabis, but in their carts and everything. But at least it's better than having research chemicals and shit you don't even know about what's in there. So the other side of it is, I think the pushback from a lot of I call them the psychedelic hipsters, is they're talking about the therapy aspects of it and people being abused and things like that. But I
Yes.
mean, as you mentioned, that seems like that happens in the jungle too.
Absolutely.
Maybe not necessarily where you're going, but like it does.
Yeah, but-
You hear the
yeah,
stories.
absolutely. Oh yeah, there's stuff going on. What's driving a lot of the MDMA stuff now is believe it or not, PTSD veterans. And over the years, the Israelis did a lot of groundbreaking research with it. The thing about MDMA, a couple of things. It was discovered, I think it was like 1865 originally. And because it was discovered so long ago, it cannot be patented. Sasha Shogun is credited with sort of rediscovering it. Well, if you're doing it right, you can do 1 or 2 MDMA sessions with good follow-up therapy, and you're good. You don't need to keep doing it. You can do 1 or 2.
In my late 20s, I found, I didn't do it a ton, but I found a decent amount, or I grabbed it because it was rare. For me, I'm not out there, whatever, but I knew a guy, he's like, this is pure. It was tested, it was great. For my OCD, it was unbelievable, but you can overdo it. So I remember Maurice and I went to a fish show, and I gave us each a 0.3, so it was a 300 milligram dose.
Oh, that's pretty healthy.
I had to leave because I'm like, this is
overload.
This is some wild shit. And I've done mushrooms and doses and stuff at shows, and this was a whole different ball game. I don't know why it hit me like that, but even Maurice freaked out. He went to the porta potty for a little bit, and but yeah, so like you got to be careful, even if it's pure stuff, because you can definitely overdo it as well.
Oh yeah, I had a friend who got carried away and did too much, and she ended up getting dehydrated, and she ended up waking out. She ended up just about in a straitjacket. They had to come call the paramedics and take her away and they didn't listen to me. I told them about respecting it and how much to do and don't get carried away, and they just kept doing it and doing it. And she got psychotic because she wasn't paying attention. But the pharmaceutical companies would rather have you take your Xanax and have an automatic debit from your checking account. They can't really make the money from the MDMA. But
the other aspect, though, too, is the therapy. So just as I mentioned, I have had in my life severe OCD. Now it's nominal because I've found mechanisms and ways to deal with it. But at one point, it's like when you go to therapy, this person has no fucking clue what you're going through. Like they can ask you questions or CBT is helpful, things like things like that. But that would be the only question for me is regular therapy and regular psychotherapists and psychiatrists have trouble understanding what they're dealing with. So how is that then any different than applying psychedelics in that setting? And I understand that that's the way to get it legal. That's modern society, yada, 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 yada. But that's why I'm an advocate for just make it legal and let people figure it out, kind of a thing. And maybe have that as an option. If somebody wants to go to a psychiatrist or a psychotherapist or a facilitator, cool. But if they want to do it at home in the comfort of their own home, that should be an option as well.
Yeah, I agree. There was a controversy way back between Aldous Huxley and Timothy Leary. Timothy Leary just wanted to give everybody LSD, turn on, tune in, and drop out. Huxley was like, no, it should be structured, it should be educated, and I'm more along the lines of Huxley because you don't know what somebody's psychological condition is going in. They could, as you mentioned, you don't strike me as OCD, by the way, but somebody could be OCD or whatever they are. There's that ingrained pattern or whatever, but we're all neurochemically different.
Well, there's different. So I definitely have rituals and obsessive thought patterns, but I've kind of found a way to channel it in a positive way through my creative endeavors. And I have been on SSRIs. I have done CBT therapy. I understand all the things that are out there, exposure therapy and things like that. But I mean, I would consider them flare-ups or like triggers. So like, I could be fine for 10 months and then something could set me off, and then it's like, oh man, this sucks. I have to figure this out, and it's back to ground zero kind of a thing. Maybe not ground zero, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's habits and there's patterns and those kind of things. But there's also the neurochemical thing where for argument's sake, like somebody who's schizophrenic, their brain chemistry is whacked. They're just neurochemically imbalanced.
And we don't even understand that one, right? Because
No,
I think the latest thing I read is now they're looking into the gut biome, because there's something about having certain, different strains of different things and flora in their gut flora that affected, and they found that giving them some people that have it, is beneficial. So, I mean, who knows what it is? I know that was part of the DMT trials too. I mean, the way that they've studied DMT, they were taking urine analysis, trying to see if maybe DMT was responsible for the hallucinations.
Yeah. You have somebody, I like to say they're a cheap date. They could take a small amount of something and just totally blow their brains out. And somebody else like me, who's a hardhead, could take 5 times as much and not get affected as much, because everybody's different and you just don't know. And if you have trauma that's hidden below the surface, part of the psychedelic therapy is to bring it out and be able to deal with it when it comes out. I mean, that's what ayahuasca is really all about, is getting down to the core of things and bringing it out. But it needs to be in a place that's safe, where they can be vulnerable and go through what they need to do with somebody with experience who can guide and watch over them to make sure that they don't hurt themselves and they don't try to jump out a window and all those things,
So that's the tough thing. I agree with you, but I also, for somebody like me, like maybe there's a test you can then take or something like that, where it's like, I can do this shit on my own. I don't need it,
It really is on a case by case basis. It's one of the reasons
that's why it's so complicated, right? Because it's like a journeyman can handle whatever, like I could eat as much psilocybin, whatever, and be fine, but somebody who's never done it, well, that's a whole different story. So
yeah, I had some years ago, some friends, we had some pure Molly, and some friends wanted to have a journey and they wanted me there, and so I went, and they brought in this other lady who they didn't know what they were doing, and she ended up wigging out, and I spent the whole time out in the back of their house. It was out in the middle of nowhere, thank God, and she was screaming and going nuts, and I had her literally screaming into the ground to get the energy out. She totally flipped, and I was kind of pissed off, because it's like, but I realized they didn't know what they were doing. They thought, oh, just give it to Mateo. He'll take care of it. It was like that. And she wigged. She should have never taken anything.
My most powerful experience was on a camping trip. Is it hippie flipping? Is that MDMA and psilocybin?
Yes. Yeah. Hippie.
Yeah.
I call it. Yeah.
That was my most powerful. I had like visions in the campfire and like things to this day that like have come true that I saw in my mind, like crazy shit. And I've talked a little bit about it on the show or whatever. I keep a lot of stuff close to the vest, though, that are meaningful, just because there's no point, and it's meaningful to me. It's not, I'm not trying to shock and awe people, but yeah, there's been some weird experiences, but the hippie flipping was my favorite combination.
Me too.
Yeah.
My very favorite. Probably my second one is doing 2CB after a Molly journey at the end of it. I call it the rose-colored sunset.
Is 2CBs, that's the one that's kind of like LSD, right? Or is that? Or no?
Yeah. It seemed like the visions in that are kind of, for lack of better words, almost like digital. There seems to be this thing, and if you do a little bit in the latter part of a MDMA journey, it's beautiful. I
remember people trying to pass that off in like high school. Like if you couldn't get LSD or whatever, there'd be people like, oh, this is LSD. No, it's 2CB kind of a thing. let's wrap it up, bro. My ass is asleep right now.
Yeah, my ears are killing me from the headphones.
I was working for like 10 hours before we even did this too, sitting at my computer all day. So we did 2 hours. That's a
Wow.
it's
Yeah.
a journey in itself. I thought this was probably one of our, aside from our first one we did together, I really enjoyed this conversation a lot, and I think that people get a lot out of it. We got some great comments. And yeah, just a whole different vibe than last night, which is kind of what I was hoping for. So
I'm glad I could swoop in.
yeah, sometimes you got to critique things, you know. When you critique things, people don't like it.
Yeah.
It's about being honest with this is what I get mad at is like, it's about being honest with yourself. Like, if you want to speculate and have fun, let's talk about aliens and Bigfoot, whatever. Let's have fun. But you want to start debating people, calling people out, getting crazy with shit, you open yourself up to criticism and critique. That's just what it is, you know? So it's like, for me, you know, hopefully I've said what I've said about it. I'm on to, like I said, working on this free philosophy course. And then hopefully, I'm going to do a Patreon thing eventually where I help people navigate these mysteries based on things that I've learned and using philosophy and, you know, what's what. Because I think I came into this the wrong way, this podcast. I came in from the woo and the unknown, trying to get into the known. And I think it's more powerful if you go from the known to the unknown, if that makes sense.
But I would argue that you came in the right way, because you came in with an inquiring mind.
It's that wisdom right there.
You came in with an inquiring mind, and you, my friend, are a seeker of truth. And that's the best you can ever ask for. And if you stumble in and you make mistakes and whatever, you can't criticize yourself, because you went in with an open mind and an open heart to learn. And I got a lot of respect for what you're doing. So cut yourself some slack. To hell with the bozos. Who needs them?
You're going to make me cry, Matthew.
No, man, I'm telling you.
No, but that's very nice. I do, honestly, like, that means a lot, because I do consider you a very wise, traveled person who understands things on a level that maybe a lot of people don't even get to. So, and it's not just the psychedelics, it's, you know, your whole vibe of things and the way you look at the world and everything. So I really do appreciate that. And that's why I love having you on, because you're not only have you been there, done that, you know, all the people, rubbed elbows with all the right people, but you've taken the message that's, some people don't take away from these things. You know, some people might go and like come back for a few months, feel great, and then it's like, oh, whatever. You've really integrated this thing into your life, and you know, you're a great writer, and I think that all these things kind of are self-evident.
So here's my truth. I'm a wise guy. The one thing I'll cop to is that I'm a legend in my own mind. That's as far as I'll go.
Dude, you're a legend in my mind, bro. So it's not just your own mind. I had a brief back and forth with Casey Hardison on X, and I said, you are a true ambassador to psychedelics. And I truly believe that, because, you know, you're saying all the right things too. And it resonates with me as somebody that, like I said, I've been in this thing now for over 20 years myself, and it isn't for everybody. And there's been times where it isn't even right for me. You know, and I think it's just about being honest with yourself and giving yourself a full self-appraisal and constantly growing and learning. And that's kind of what we should all strive for.
In the end, all we really have is respect. And that, to me, the two sides of the coin are respect and integrity. And it's important for me to get the message out as best I can to people, so everybody goes into it with their eyes wide open. That's like my mission. I'm on a mission from dog. That's my mission. So I really appreciate the fact that you have this venue that allows other people to hear, you know, not that I'm always right or any of that, but that I am speaking from my heart. I want to get information out there that's good, so people are aware. That's the main thing.
Yeah, and sometimes I focus on, like the last episode was right, wrong, oh, this person. But at the end of the day, I think it really comes down to intention, because if you have the purest of intentions, people are willing. It doesn't matter if you're right or wrong, because you're there, you're present. This is who I am. This is what I'm about, and that's what I vibe with, and that's what I like. So, of course, you are welcome back on the show anytime, and let's get your books out there. I know you have The Thinning Veil. I have the link down below. 13 Twisted Tales. And also I Am Consciousness Incarnate. I'm sorry. I keep saying incarnate like it's...
I say incarnate. George Norrie says incarnate. You're right.
And the links, both links are down below. Are you working on anything new, or just vibing on those still?
Yeah, I'll say this really quick, because otherwise you and I will be here all night and your ass will be totally dead. But I have a story in The Thinning Veil called Fetal Fantasies. And it's about a couple who pick all the genetics for their kid and they raise it in an electronic womb. And it goes through the first part of its life throwing tantrums, and it doesn't communicate. And they're worried that it's autistic or weird, and it goes on for a couple of years. And then when it's about 2 years old, after never speaking, it stands up in its crib and it says, "You will worship me. You will bow down and worship me with everything that you have and all that you are. And you will serve me with all that you can." And that's where the story ends. I'm writing a novel.
Jesus.
Well, so it's a narcissist, because all babies have to be narcissists. So I'm getting ready next week to hit the third draft of a novel that starts with that story. And just the last little piece I'll say is, when they finally start to communicate with this baby who starts showing amazing abilities, they ask it, why do you say, he says he's from a higher dimension. Why do you say that you should bow down and worship me with all that you have and all that you are? And he says, yes, you should bow down and worship me with everything that you have and all that you are, just as you should be worshiping each other, instead of killing each other and destroying the planet and going to war, and everything you touch, you mess up. And it goes on from there. That's a nutshell. But it's based on a story that's in that. And
that sounds like a Black Mirror episode. That actually is pretty intriguing. I want to check that out. So
it's the Hummingbird Whisperer. Is the
Picaflor Whisperer.
Yeah, and it'll be out in the fall. Like I said, I'm getting ready to do the third draft now.
All right. Well, I'm looking forward to that one.
Thank you for asking. I think it's got. I'm excited about this one.
Yeah,
it'll be my 21st book.
Interesting. 21st book. Wow, that's impressive. I remember, what was the first one? I always forget. It's is it Death, Love Me, or
Death, a Love Story.
Death, a Love Story. Yeah, that was the first one of yours that I read. Yeah.
Oh, right
on. But yeah, man, you're a great writer, so I'm definitely looking forward to that. And you mentioned the Earth. Let's take care of the Earth. Mm-hmm. Those fuckers that did the shit to Stonehenge, you don't need to do that shit. Don't do that shit. You're just pissing more. You're just doing more damage to your cause. People don't want to see that shit. So, and you destroyed rare lichens. So,
yeah, there you go. I thought about that too, actually. Yeah, you're right.
But otherwise, take care of the Earth. Love each other. We'll end it the same way we end every show: is I love everybody. We love everybody. Stay safe out there, and we'll catch you next time. Peace.
Thanks for having me on, brother.
Yep, of course. Anytime, brother. Love you.
You too, man.